Hi everyone, my name's Lorenza and welcome to part 2 of my vlog of the Diane Von Furstenberg wrap dress. Now I did call it a vlog on my last video and I feel quite silly. I realized it's a vlog, not a vlog, so a video log, like a blog, but it's a video. Anyway, I'm an elder millennial, please forgive me. So we're up to part 2 and I'm going to take you through the more things I've done wrong, the things where I'm deviating away from the pattern, and I'll talk to you a bit here and show you some things, and I'll take you over to the desk, and then I'll wrap up and talk about what's next and bring you back to the camera here. So what have I done since I talked to you last? I have sewn the facing, so I'll just show you what I've got going on here. I'll just take that off for a bit. So that's the facing there, but so the front, that's the front and this is the facing I've just put over here. So since I last have chatted to you, I've ironed and pressed, I've sewn all the darts and pressed all the darts. On the back, I will show you over at the desk later, but on the back I did some tacking stitches, and it'll be easier when I do it flat lay and showed you. But when you've got pleats like this on tops, and this is very hard to see probably on this fabric, I always do some little tacking stitches. I know you're only meant to sew it in the seam allowance, but I tend to do some tacking stitches before I press it, because otherwise you're just doing a lot of pinning and pressing to get it in place. So I will show you a close-up of that. So that is the back part of the dress. So I did the darts at the top, I've pressed them, and I've done those pleats at the back, which will give it some nice shape, and I've just tacked them in place while I pressed them. I have also, so like I was saying, I've done the facing. Now, I know this says it's a very easy Vogue pattern, but if you were new to sewing, the front facing part here, so the two front facing pieces, the bodice and the part of the skirt, these do not go together very well. They're not proved together, and I'll show you when I'm doing, I'll show you with the pattern pieces flat. So if you were new to sewing, I think this would be quite alarming as to why these pieces don't go together. I'm not sure why it wasn't proved and the notch doesn't match them up. Let me know if any of the rest of you have had this problem either. I just can't make sense of why they have made the pattern like this. It's like the skirt bit doesn't come in sizes, it's just your stock standard size, unless I've missed something on the pattern. So the front facing along the bodice comes in your staggered, like the sizes, and I've cut out a 14, but then when I went to add the skirt front facing, it just doesn't match up. So I've got quite a bit of, I guess, overhang here. And what I'm going to do is I'll just overlock it off. Like, it doesn't phase me because it's going on the inside of the dress, so it doesn't really matter. So I made sure that I matched up. You can see here, these two parts, I think you can see here. I made sure this matched up because that's the part that will be the facing joining to the dress. So I need that to face, to join up. I don't want overhang of the seam there. Whereas on this bit, on the outside where that's not joining the dress, I'll just overlock the edge off. So there's about maybe 7 mil difference. And yeah, I looked and looked, I proved the pattern. I was like, I don't understand why they have done this like this. Doesn't really faze me, but I just thought if you were new to sewing, that would really stump you and you might not know where to place the pattern pieces to have the overhang where there's too much fabric there, or not enough, depending on what size you're making. So that was a little alarming. The other thing is, so that's pattern piece 7 and pattern piece 9, and then the pattern piece 8 at the back is the neck facing at the back. Now on the pattern pieces, it says cut to fabric, cut to interfacing, which is pretty standard. The pattern piece 8 doesn't say cut 2 pieces of interfacing. And I thought it should say cut 2 pieces of interfacing. Of course, when I looked at the pattern, it is written in there, but that's something, again, if you were new to sewing, you could easily skip that and just think, oh, okay, maybe the neck facing doesn't need interfacing. It will need interfacing, because if you're putting it on the skirt facing and the bodice facing, you think you need that facing going the whole way around. So if you're just cutting out the pattern and cutting out pattern pieces, pattern piece number 8, that back facing, you will need to cut interfacing. So it is on the pattern instructions, but it's not on the paper on the tissue pattern. I'll just grab this to show you. So say where it says front facing, and it will say fabric cut to, interfacing cut to. On number 8, the neck facing, doesn't say to cut interfacing. I feel like I'm saying interfacing a lot, so I'll move along. But just a lot of drama here with the facings. Let me just check my notes. So the other thing, I thought I'd adhered all my interfacing beautifully, and I did adhere all my interfacing to the facings, not to the dress like the pattern suggests. So I'd adhered it all, started to work with it, and the glue hadn't necessarily melted enough. And I literally just did a reel this week on interfacing and saying make sure you test your iron and your glue so you know when the glue dots will melt. So I had not held on my iron on some parts for long enough, so my interfacing started lifting up everywhere, which is not ideal. That's completely my fault. So I went back and I have adhered all those glue dots on. So yes, what have I done? What else have I done since then? The other thing, I accidentally cut out the facing for, I'm half asleep clearly while I'm sewing. I also cut out the facing for skirt, for skirt B, which is a much longer one. No drama, just chopped it off, but just be mindful of that when you're doing the pattern between, are you doing A or B? I'm doing A, I'm doing the shorter version. I also cut out the version of B for the sash, but I always think you need a longer sash. Always. No one is as skinny as the models on any of the pattern packets, no matter what the length of the sash is. Just add another 5 centimeters. Trust me on this. You will always wish you had a longer sash. Always. No one has a tiny skinny waist. Or if you eat a big meal or a lunch or you're sitting and you want to loosen that sash a bit, make the sash longer. So I cut out the B version of the sash, which is slightly longer, but I'm happy about that. So yeah, sash, cut it out too long, but I'm happy. And the facing too long, just snipped it off, didn't really matter. But it did mean I did a lot of interfacing I didn't need to. What else have I done? I've sewed in the center back of the skirt. So that's pretty easy. That's exciting, wildly exciting. Center back, and I overlocked it. Now this fabric, I don't need to overlock it, but I am overlocking all the seams just because I think it will look nice. So center back seam. I've pressed out the seams and overlocked them. I think that's about it. So I'll take you over to the desk and show you where I think 7 and 9 pattern pieces don't go together, and some of the other bits and bobs I just talked about, or the back stitching on the pleats on the back bodice. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll show you those bits I've done. So we're over at the desk, and the first thing I wanted to show you with the back pleat here, where the pleat goes over, on the bodice, what I tend to do, so at the back here, I do a little tacking stitch just where the pleat, where it is recommended on the pattern that it's folded over to. So you can see there, so I do a little tacking stitch, because I found if you just sew where the seam allowance is, then you still need to pin it in order to press that pleat in. Just let me, I'm not holding it very well. So you can see there I've done a little tacking stitch. And sometimes I've found on patterns like this, I end up just top stitching it to hold it in place because the pleat isn't really doing a lot. It just gets pulled apart really quickly. So I tend to do a tacking stitch, or sometimes I do a top stitch. So that's what I've done on the back bodice pleats. I wanted to just explain and show that. Now the other thing I mentioned, where here's number 8, it says back neck facing, and it says cut 1 on fold. It mentions nothing about interfacing, but it does in the pattern. So please cut out the interfacing for that. Whereas on the other facing pattern pieces, it's very clear. It says fabric, cut 2, interfacing, cut 2. Now, all I would think is maybe they didn't write it on here because the pattern piece is so small. So just don't skip that step. I mean, yeah, still just cut out the interfacing and adhere it on. I mean, if you skip it, you can still cut it out, but yeah, please cut it out and do it. Don't skip that because you won't read it on the pattern. Now, the other thing, while I'm talking about interfacing though, a lot of people have asked me, do I trim down my interfacings? Because the pattern again recommends, so they say to trim in, say 1.5, so you don't have a lot of bulk in your seam allowance. I never do this, especially on something that is such a fine, lightweight fabric like this. And I've used a very lightweight, I think it's called a whisper weft fusible interfacing. There is absolutely no need to be trimming down your interfacing on something like this. It's just a lot more hassle than what it's worth. So no, I would never trim down my interfacings for a garment like this, especially with the weight of the fabric and the interfacing. On something much bulkier, like a wool jacket, absolutely, if that interfacing is thick and heavy, or like what I'm stabilizing the jacket with. But for this, no. So yes, the pattern mentions it. Absolutely, I have not done it. You're welcome to do it. You're not going to notice this huge difference if you trim it down. So the other thing I was talking about was the pattern pieces 7 and 9. So here is pattern piece 9. So this is the front facing, and I'll bring the garment so you can see exactly what I mean as well. So you can see the overhang. And so here it is in the fabric. So that's pattern piece 9. Just put some pins there. And then here is 7. I'll just turn it around so you can see. Yeah, it's got to go on backwards just so you can Get the idea though, but see, that's where they meet. Now, when I proved that pattern and drew in the 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, it does not match up. And as I was saying, I think it's because this is graded in the sizes and this pattern piece has no grading for sizes on it. So it's fine, like I said, if you've been sewing for a little bit, but if you are new, you'd be like, well, where am I putting it here? And yes, it's got, sorry, I'm using the wrong piece of it. Yes, it's got notches, so you'd know where to join it up. So hypothetically, I'm doing it there, but still, it's not matching up. There's too much overhang there. Please let me know if I'm completely reading this pattern wrong, but to me, I thought that would sort of throw me if I was new to sewing. Even when you match up the notches, it just looks like it really doesn't want to match up. So as I said, I made sure this outside bit perfectly met here because that's the bit I'm joining to the dress, obviously, so I want that to be nicely aligned with the seam allowance. And here this will be overlocked off, so it doesn't matter that it's sort of not matching up perfectly, so I will just completely trim that off when I overlock it. So that was my drama with the facing. The next thing I need to decide on is where it recommends using a stay, like to use a stay for the skirt seam binding here and some kind of stay at the front of the bodice. So this is so it doesn't gape or stretch along here. Now I did ask this on Instagram and I got some different feedback from people of what they'd use, because I was saying that sometimes I use bias binding as a bit of a stay or this iron-on interfacing. I still haven't decided yet what I'm going to use. And some people wrote back saying that they just stay stitched it. Some people said they used like a tricot, the kind of old original, what it used to be called for a stay, because this is a vintage pattern. So yeah, a lot of different options there. I will let you know what I end up going with. So basically I need to sew something onto the front of the bodice there. I got my front bodice piece here, so it doesn't stretch. I also might use just tearaway Vilene, so it's this section along here. I might just use tearaway Vilene and sew that on so it doesn't stretch as you make the garment, which makes a lot of sense. I just haven't decided which stay I'm going to use yet. So that was everything I wanted to show you down at the table. The 8 with the no interfacing, on the back bodice, those little tacking stitches I did do them on the machine though, and all the dramas I've been having with the facings, with 7 and 9 on the facings. So that's it for the table. I'll take you back up to the other camera now. So what's next? I need to decide on what kind of stay I'm going to use on the bodice and the skirt. I've got the sash here pinned ready to go. Sometimes I just like sewing the easy stuff when I'm a bit stuck on other things. So I'm going to sew the sash next, and I've sewed the sleeves in the part 1 I did, because yeah, like I said, I just like doing the easy stuff when I get stuck on other things. So I'm going to do the sash next, decide on the stay, and I'm still deciding on the collar. I'm now thinking, do I want the collar back in? But I can't really do the bodice until I decide on the collar. So a few things to decide, but I can join the back skirt with the back because the pleats and darts are in the back bodice, and the back skirt, the center back seam, is sewn. So I can join those two pieces together next. So just a few more things for me to decide on. Mainly with that stay and the collar, and then I can keep going on with construction. So I hope you enjoyed my vlog part 2, and yeah, I'll definitely be back for a part 3, which should be pretty much nearing the end by then. So thanks for watching. Bye.